This is the first video in my series in January where I'm going to be trying my best to have a no spend month. So I'm calling this series Frugal Fridays. I'm using a free pattern every Friday in January. And if you guys like me doing these free patterns on Fridays, I could definitely keep on doing them. So for this first version, I am sewing a pattern from a designer that I have never sewn one of their patterns. This is Klistar Creations, and this pattern is called the Stardew. Now this pattern is specifically designed for gaming systems, which I thought was perfect for the fabric that I have here. This fabric is from K&A Custom Fabrics, and although it is new to me, I had bought it several months ago, so it just now got here. So I still did not buy anything specifically to do this. It was just things I had previously bought. So far in January, I have not spent any money on sewing supplies. I will keep you updated if I do have to make any purchases or if I do give in and make a purchase. This pattern from Klistar Creations is actually one of two patterns that she has for free. You can only get these patterns through her Facebook group. She actually got rid of her Etsy, her website, everything. So you just go into her Facebook group and you can just download the files. So I'll have the link to her Facebook group in my description. If you don't have a Facebook though, there is no way to get this pattern. So for my fabrics, I'm using a cotton canvas. I found some webbing that matches decently and a zipper tape and some zipper pulls. But I wanted to show you how this print looks. This is an XLDP, so you have the print with the panel at the top and then you have the coordinating print on the bottom. I love getting these because I feel like I get two different fabrics for the price of one. The pattern tells you can use a cotton woven or vinyl to make the handles, but I'm just using webbing to save some time. And so what I'm going to do is go off camera, cut everything out, and then we'll come back and start talking about the pieces and start sewing up this pattern. I have everything cut out and I'm going to go through the pieces. For the zipper panels, we are going to have 4 in total. 2 exteriors, 2 linings. For the lining, since I'm using a cotton canvas, I'm not putting anything on those pieces. For the exterior, I did add a layer of Thermoland just to give it a little bit of extra structure. I did keep it in the seam allowance just because I was in a hurry. Also, for those zipper panels, I went ahead and cut the zipper tape. I'm using a number 5. I believe I got this from Mormino, but I'm not for sure. And I also have 2 zipper pulls for the top. You could use only 1 if you wanted. I am using webbing from the Emporium and I have 4 pieces cut. 2 pieces will be for the connectors that will go from the front to the back, and then 2 will be for the handbag straps. You have 3 different options to make this pattern. You can do the version that I'm doing with the handbag straps. You can do kind of just 1 piece on the back for like to slip your hand under to carry it that way, or you could do a crossbody strap. That back one would be the cheapest option to do if you're really trying to conserve materials because you only need 1 strap there. For the inside, I'm going to make a slip pocket. This is optional. I'm going to show you the full pattern, which does include the option for the slip pockets to be holding the game cartridges. On this piece, I cut 1 piece of cotton canvas and then I went ahead and folded it. I'll talk a little bit more about how I folded this whenever we get to that step. You will also have 1 backing piece and I'm just using a cotton woven for it. If you do that slip pocket, you have the option of making a slip pocket tab. You don't need to do this even if you do the slip pocket. This is just going to have a snap on the back of it and just kind of help to hold a console or anything you want to put in that slip pocket in a little bit more securely. We have 1 exterior piece. You can see it's all 1 piece. I'm using a directional piece at the top, but the bottom's going to be non-directional, so mine won't have a problem being folded because the way this will work is it will fold like this. So this will be the back, this will be the front. If your print's non-directional, you don't have to worry about it. Go ahead and cut out this 1 piece. If you're choosing to use a directional print, You would just want to, instead of cutting on the fold, cut 2 pieces with the pattern piece, but definitely make sure you add in a seam allowance, sew them right sides together, and then make sure you get the proper size for the pattern. So just make sure you take note of that if you want to use a directional print. So for my exterior, the cotton canvas again, and I did add a layer of Thermolan onto it. For the lining, I'm using a cotton woven. Now, the other thing you'll need is you'll need 2 side gusset pieces for the exterior and then 2 lining gusset pieces. For the exterior, I have them interface with a Thermolan. For the lining, nothing on these 2 pieces. So these are the pieces that we need to sew up this bag. Let's go ahead and start by pulling out that slip pocket piece. Like I said, this is optional. I'm going to unclip this to show you what it looks like whenever you have the full piece cut. So for your pattern piece, you'll cut out this full piece. On the pattern piece, you have lines to mark for this fold, and then also where you pull it up to. It's really easy. You just have 2 folds. It's an accordion style. So what I did was I just folded these wrong sides together, pressed them with the iron, and then pulled them up to the spot they needed to go up to. Did the same with this peak up here. So now that I have the 2 peaks there, this will be for my game cartridges. I'm just going to grab one of them, lift it up, fold everything else away, and I'm going to top stitch on this first one, and then I'll repeat that top stitching on the second one. Top stitching isn't really necessary. Lots of times I don't do it. But where this is going to be such a long piece, I feel like it'll benefit from it. I'm going to do my top stitching just 1/8 of an inch away. Now that I have those 2 top stitched, I'm just going to baste just this little section here, just so it doesn't get moved around and shifted. Now that I have that top stitch and those sides basted, I'm going to pull out the backing piece. What you do is you take this backing piece and you place it right sides together with the slip pocket exterior that we just completed. If you want to just do a regular slip pocket without these card slot pieces, just cut out 2 of your backing pieces. Once you have that right sides together, you're going to sew along the top and along the bottom. Please make note of your seam allowance in this step. It is a little bit bigger. I'm going to make sure I back stitch and then go all along here using that seam allowance, making sure that everything's staying lined up. Once you have that done, flip it around and do the same thing on the bottom. And this is how that looks. We have the backing there and we have that exterior on this side. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to trim down those seams, turn this right sides out through the sides. The sides are not sewn at all. And I'm going to take it over the ironing board. I'm going to give it a really good press and then I'll come back to talk. I have everything turned right sides out and pressed really nicely. Technically, you are supposed to sew on the slots for the cartridges before you add the backing. I personally prefer to go through more layers. However, this does mean that I will be able to see the bobbin thread from this wrong side. I'll see those stitches. If that bothers you, just do this step before you add the backing to this piece. Now I'm going to pull out the template for this piece because there's no measurements on it and it's not giving anything away. But what I'll do is I'll center this piece on here. You don't have to sew all the way to the top. You really just need to put this like this, matching up with that first slot you made, and then just sew down. That will end up giving you 2 places to put the cartridges on each piece. And I'm going to do like the designer does in her video. She just folds each section back as she sews it. I like that because that means not any marking and not a lot of worrying about removable marks and things like that. So each of these will go through both sides of mine. Keep that in mind. I'm going to start here at the top, back stitch, and go all the way down and back stitch again. Once I have that first one done, then I'll simply fold this piece back onto that next line, making sure everything's straight there. Clip that in place, and then go ahead and sew my second one. I'm going to repeat this process all the way down till I get to the end of this template. This is an optional step, just if you want to use this for those game cartridges. I'll continue repeating this to go all the way down, and then I'll come back for the next step. I have all my cartridge slots completed. They look super cute. So now I'm going to sew some horizontal lines. I'll do one row at the top of top stitching. I'm going to do one row here right where all my cartridge slots end. Designer tells you could even do a piece of like vinyl contrast here if you want it a little fancy. I'm just going to sew across, and then I'll also sew across the bottom. So I'm going to do 3 horizontal lines all the way across to finish up this slip pocket. So now I have this part completed. Let's go ahead and pull out my lining piece. I did decide to add some woven interfacing onto this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my slip pocket piece and center it onto this piece. So I'm just going to find my centers here, and then find my center here, and then lay it on top of each other. So the lining will be right sides up, my slip pocket piece will be right sides up. And now we're going to sew all the way down that center line. If you need to use a marking tool, you can. Just make sure it's something you can remove. I'm just going to use my crease and follow along there and sew this piece together. So now at this point you have to make a couple of choices. So I want to add a snap tab on one side. I think on this side, and yes, I know my print is directional, but I really wanted to use it. So I think I'm going to add a snap tab on this side, but I'm going to leave this side without the snap tab on it. But you could do a snap tab on both, one or none at all. Let's pull out this snap tab piece. What I'm going to do is I am probably going to use a cam snap on this, and I am going to choose to have the cam snap to go through both layers. So I'm going to place these right sides together though, and my print's slightly directional but not too big of a deal, so I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm going to start sewing at the top. I'm going to back stitch here, go all the way around. When I get to this corner, I'm just going to slightly curve it. Do the same thing on this side, go up to this top, back stitch here. Leave this open so I can turn it right sides out. Now that I have this piece sewn right sides together, I'll add a little bit of interfacing on the back, and then I'm going to just trim up these edges, turn it right sides out and press. So I have the flap turned right sides out, and I have a hole poked with my hole puncher for the cam snap. You could use a magnetic snap, you could use a spring snap, whatever you want. So whichever way you want to be your exterior, I'm going to have this one be the exterior for me. I'm going to put in the finished edge of the cam snap through the hole. And then I always put the female portion of the cam snap onto the part that's moving, that's not stationary. The male portion I always put on the stationary piece. I have a handheld cam snap press. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to center this snap, I'll leave a little bit of overhang there, onto this lining piece. The pattern tells us that we can use this opening here on the side to insert some fleece into this portion for us to have the cam snap going through it. But I'm not too worried about it, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through both layers of this material. So that means I already have some pretty good stabilizer there. So I'm going to kind of push this down to find that perfect placement. Mark that spot. I'm going to go ahead and base this in place, and then I will use my hole punch to punch the hole there, and then to insert the other cam snap. To insert the snap on this one, I'm going to make for sure that the finished edge is on the back. I need to be looking at the snapping part on the front. I'll just use this press. So that has that part done. Fits perfectly. I'll go ahead and snap it there. I'm going to go ahead and baste down the sides of this lining and the slip pocket, and then I will set it aside until I have my exterior ready to be attached to the lining piece. So I pulled out my exterior piece, and like I had mentioned, I'm doing the handbag option. So let's go over how we will do that. The two shorter pieces of webbing that I have, or vinyl if you're using that, I took both of those shorter pieces, I pulled out 4 rectangle rings, and I placed them on each end. The pattern tells you about how much to fold down on each end, and make sure that both of the raw edges are to the back side. They're on the same side. After you have that step completed, the pattern tells you how far over you are going to place this connector, and then you're going to center it. The pattern tells you about how far from the top and the bottom each piece will be, but it will be centered. So what I did was I came in with a ruler and I made just a measurement there to denote that placement. Then I placed a layer of glue, you could use double-sided tape, on that and glued it down. So this is what I have here. The second one I will do off camera, but I want to go ahead and show you how this looks. I'm going to now sew a rectangle all the way around here. I'm going to get as close as I can to this hardware to secure it down. If you wanted, you could add rivets here, but what I'm going to do now is sew down both edges with 1/8 of an inch. I have my first handle connector attached. I'm going to repeat those same steps to attach the other one on this other side. So now I have both the exterior and the lining done. Let's put these wrong sides together, base all around, and then we'll have to start working on the gusset so we can put everything together. So I'm going to sew from my exterior side just because I have the hardware there and it'll be a little bit bulky. Okay, so I have my exterior and lining basted together, made sure I had it the right way I wanted it. So for me, I wanted this part to be on the top, this part to be on the bottom, so whenever I'm carrying it like this, I can access this flap there. So that's the way mine will look. I'm going to set this aside. Now we need to work on that gusset, and then we only have a few more steps to get everything done. So for the gusset piece, I will start by having my lining right sides up, and then take my zipper tape, place it right sides up, and clip all along that long edge. You don't have to baste. You could go ahead and add your exterior here to this as well. Make just a traditional zipper sandwich. I just always baste to have these two pieces in place. Okay, so now that those two pieces are basted, go ahead and pull out one of your exterior pieces. My exterior piece is slightly directional, so I want to make for sure that I have it going the way I want. I'm going to place it like this so that that is the direction I want it to go, and then I'm going to flip it so that it's right sides together, matching all along that top edge, and definitely making sure I match up those short edges as well. I do not have my zipper pull on yet, just for ease of sewing at this step. At this point, I'll sew with the full seam allowance. Once the two zipper panels are attached to the zipper, go ahead and pull them so that they are wrong sides together. I'm going to baste along this raw edge first, and then I will come and top stitch along the finished edge. I find that the basting stitch just works better for me, so that I can pull both pieces at the same time and get a better top stitch. This is how the first side looks with the zipper panels attached to the zipper. I'm going to repeat to do that other side, and then I'll add my zipper pulls and trim up my extra zipper tape at the end. So I have the zipper gusset trimmed down. I have the pulls on. Now it's time to add the little gusset pieces. I have the other side clipped, but I haven't sewn it on yet. So what I want to do first is I'm going to kind of orientate this exterior piece the way I want it to go in the end. This is the way I want it to look, so I'll flip it back, match up this edge here. This is what we're sewing. After I have that one in place, I'll flip it over to the lining, grab out that lining piece, and go ahead and lay it right sides together with the lining. Add a few clips here. I don't feel basting is necessary on this where it's such a short distance, but you definitely can baste if you wanted to first with just the exterior or the lining. So now that I have that clipped into place, I'm going to go ahead and sew this area with the seam allowance given the pattern. So I'll back stitch at the beginning and sew all the way down to the other end, back stitching as well. Make note of your seam allowance. It is a little bit bigger, and also if you were doing the crossbody, you would want to put in your D-ring connectors for the crossbody here. Before you sew it, you would want to base them in place. Also for the crossbody, the gusset and the side gusset and the zipper panels are different sizes than if you're doing the handbag, just to kind of help to make sure that the bag doesn't flip when wearing it as a crossbody. Once you have those pieces sewn together, go ahead and separate them by pulling them wrong sides together. Let's give a little tug and let's top stitch across that finished edge. I'm not going to base this bottom edge because of the way I'm going to sew it onto the exterior lining panel. So I'm leaving that edge open and just top stitching down here. I'm going to go ahead and do that same thing for this other gusset piece, and then we will come back to attach it to our exterior. So we are down to these two basic pieces. We still have the handles for the straps, but this is really what we got left. And so now what we need to do is combine these pieces. Take your zipper panel piece or your gusset piece and go ahead and mark the center of that piece there at the bottom. It should be right in line with your zipper tape. Then come over to this exterior lining panel and go ahead and find the center here. Take the short end and match up those centers and clip in place. The pattern gives us a couple of marks to make on this short side. It is pretty much the seam allowance, so I just make a mark on each side with that seam allowance. What you're going to do is you're going to sew in between those two marks, so the edges will be left open. You're going to do that on this side and you're going to do it on the other side. Now, of course, we're going to have a lot of extra material here in the middle because this gusset is longer than the main panel is wide. So again, matching up the centers, clipping in place, making sure I have the marks on there. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Make sure you check your seam allowance. Put your needle down right where that first mark is. Take a stitch or two forward and then back stitch to lock in that stitch there. Let's go ahead and do that same thing on the other side just so I don't have to worry about it coming unclipped. And so now we have that attached. So now let's come back. After we have that stitched together, let's grab out our scissors, lift up on your gusset piece. We're just cutting through our gusset piece, not our main panel. And we are going to cut pretty much where I drew that line or where your stitches end. It should be the same on each side. You're not going to cut through your stitches, just right up to it. And then what that will allow us to do is to pull up this side to be able to start clipping all the way around. So I'm going to do that on this other side. It'll just allow us to get a really nice, like kind of 90-degree angle there at the bottom, and it'll have a really good shape. Now what you'll do is you will match the center of this. I already have it marked here where I had that tab. And if you don't know your center of your zipper panel, you could even just fold it, make sure you get that mark. So once I have those center marks made, I'm just going to pull up that exterior to that center mark and clip it into place. Now I'm going to take my time to start easing around. You can start easing at the top or around the bottom, which way you do it, as long as you make sure you have it evenly distributed and everything matches up nicely. So because of that clip, you should be able to come right in here and get a really nice 90-degree angle, and everything should fit in perfectly, or pretty close to perfect. Continue to match up the edges on the other side, having the raw edges in line, clipping as needed. And you can see I'm just pulling that out a little so that I can fit it in nicely. We'll have to trim off that lower part there because it won't be fitting in. See, it sticks out, but that gives me that beautiful angle. And this is how that first side looks. Now mine looks a little floppy, but don't forget I'm going to bind around here. That'll add some more structure to it. And then once we have them both there, I'm not at all worried about the structure with the fleece and the canvas. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew this. We don't need to sew across the bottom because it's already attached, so we can just sew from one side to the other on both sides. I probably will sew both sides before I bind. Also, if you're having trouble getting down to this corner, you can start in the middle and sew down this side and then come over and sew the other way down this side. If you're having a hard time getting in to those areas there, I'm going to attempt to start right here, and I'm going to start right where I ended those last stitches so that there's not a gap. That should be perfectly what your seam allowance is. So start sewing here, back stitch a few times. Okay, let's look at what we got. Perfect. So it fits perfectly, no problems at all. For the binding, I probably will use a waterproof canvas just to save some time. This is going to be, when you flip it out, it's going to be on the inside. We're not going to see that so much. You may see a little bit on the side, but really not at all. The bottom's not going to have any binding. When it's binding like that, I just don't care too much to try to make it perfect. I want to have these seams covered so that it is a finished bag, but I'm not going to go through the steps of doing a binding with a bias cut material and doing a single fold and folding over. I'm not going to worry about that. I think I'm just going to use waterproof canvas, clip it around, and attach it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off camera now and add the binding. Do the same thing for the other side. Then I will come back, show it to you, and then we'll add the handles. And that's pretty much all we have left. My little bag is done. This is the Stardew, and it looks great. Now, I want to look at the sides. I love that shape there. That's really good. Something I would like to do differently with this, I would like if these zipper panels were a little bit wider. We sew with a really big seam allowance here, and I think on my next one, I might sew with a smaller seam allowance because I like to see the zipper panels a little bit better, and I like to be able to have them laying flat and they just want to poke up since this is kind of small. No big deal. I'm going to try to clamp them overnight to see if I can get them to lay down a little bit better. Also, I would have liked to have had a little bit more stabilizer in this bottom. So I think the next time I might put maybe a 2-inch wide layer of Decaville Heavy right there in the center, just kind of center it, give it a little bit better base. Other than that, I have no problems. So let's open it up and look on the inside. You can see here is that little slip pocket with the tab. The other slip pocket does not have the tab, but it does have a place for all those cartridges. So you see it opens really wide. Easily see what's at the bottom of this bag. No problems at all. I'm going to clip this down, like I said, to set overnight to kind of compress this seam. But before I do that, let's talk about that handle strap. All you do is slip one on each side. Fold it down, and you can use rivets here or you can just sew. I'm just going to sew, and I'll do my sewing off camera. We all know how to just sew across this edge here, but I just want to show you what it'll look like. And so that is how you'll attach the strap on both sides. Such a super cute free pattern. This pattern is free in her Facebook group. For my no spin challenge for the month of January, this pattern is a new to me pattern. First time I've sewn anything from the designer. Hopefully she will do more. She has another free pattern on her channel that I'll probably do this year as well. But I love the fact that I can make new bags, a gift for someone without spending any money on a pattern. I used supplies I had in my home. This fabric is from K&A Custom Fabrics. The webbing is from the Emporium. This webbing is on retail now. This print is actually on pre-order now. This is the first week in January, and I hope that whatever goals you set for yourself, if you set any, that you are doing good with meeting them. I hope that sewing is a part of your goals in whatever capacity you want them to be, whether you're sewing for fun or you're just trying to take more time to enjoy your sewing, or whether you're cleaning out your sewing room. I just hope you're making progress towards them, even though this is only the first week in January. Thanks so much for watching another tutorial of mine. Thanks for watching my first Frugal Friday. Like I said, I hope to continue this the entire month of January. And if you guys want to see me continue doing free patterns every Friday, just let me know in the comments, and hopefully I can give tips to help make your Fridays a little more frugal in your sewing room. Thanks so much for watching, and have an amazing day.